I thought I would run you through a typical session on commercial silvers on the pole, because there's a couple of things that I want to look at that are really basic. Really, they're based around the floats and rigs that you're using, but I think it'll help you guys catch more fish when you go out on the bank. And I'm at Syke House today, a place that I absolutely love to come silverfish fishing, and what I've done to kick it off is I've potted in about 4 or 5 balls of ground bait. Now, it might seem like quite a lot of ground bait, but this venue is a deep venue. It's got a lot of water to draw fish from. So if the sort of venue you go to is an expanse of water with, say, over 6-7 foot of depth, then cupping in that amount of ground bait at the start is really good. It's positive, it draws fish into your peg, and it gives you something to work on. And I've done that already. So all I did was, my mix here today is actually a mix that I use quite a lot. And I really like it. It's maggot fish meal, and it's got some Thatcher's Dark in it, so it's just darkened it off a little bit. I love that maggot fish meal. It's a lovely mix. It's quite a weak mix, which is great for winter. So I've got some of that in here, and all I'm looking to do is, like, if I'm potting in 4 or 5 balls at the start, I'll make them this sort of size. And what I'll do is I'll have 2 where you can see they're not really nipped together quite tightly. If I press on this, look, it just breaks up. So that's going to break up really quickly. And then I'll sort of wet my hands up and make myself another like 2 or 3 balls, and I'll really squeeze them. So I'm using the dampness from the damp hand, and I'll really squeeze them. They'll all have a few casters in probably, but that's going to take like an hour or so in this cold water to break up. So what I'm doing is a bit of instant attraction, but then leaving something there for a little bit of time, and it's drawing some fish into the peg. So it's a nice way to kick the peg off. And I did that about an hour ago now, and I've been flicking a few casters over the top, and I've been fishing a feeder just to start my session off. So now I'm ready to go on the pole. I'm going to show you the 2 rigs that I'm going to use, and they're completely in contrast to each other. And it's really important for you guys to think about the rigs that you're going to be using, because there's times when it can make a huge difference. I recently fished a match on this lake, and the first rig I'm going to show you, which is my lighter rig, was the only rig I could catch on. It was crazy, because last year the other rig that I'm going to show you was my best rig on at least 2/3 of the matches. So I was quite surprised to find this rig, what I'm going to talk you through now, was more effective. And I think there's a few things you need to look at. You need to think about how your fish are feeding on the day. So this rig in particular, this is for when the fish are cruising around up in the water and you're trying to draw them down with a bit of steady loose feed. So today I've been loose feeding about 15 to 20 casters pretty regularly into my peg. I'll keep them going in while I'm talking to you so we can get a bite. All right, and I think the fish, they're up in the water, they follow the casters down, they follow that bait down, and they think, go on then, I'll have it. And they take it, and you get a little indication on your float, and you're connecting to the fish. And my rig reflects that style of fish feeding, but we'll talk about the other one in a minute. You'll understand why you need the 2. So I've got a single 6 slip, like the greatest all-time silverfish elastic. A lot of people are asking me questions about this recently, because obviously Dura slips and things like that are very popular. That's great if you're silverfish fishing. Original slip 4, 5, 6, depending on the depth, that is your elastic. Trust me, it's a fantastic elastic. The float is a 414 shanty. Now, I love a shanty. It's got a nice cane bristle, which is so sensitive. It's unbelievable. You'd think a wooden bristle wouldn't be so sensitive, but that cane is really sensitive. Nice and bright tip there. 414s, even though it's 8 foot deep, with a nice carbon stem. I've got an 014 main line. You need a relatively durable main line. Don't go too light on your main line. You don't want, if you've got carp and things like that you might hook into, don't go too light on your main line. Keep a little bit of thickness there. It just holds your rig up a little bit as well. And then I've got a bulk that I've talked about a little bit recently, and it's a rig that I've used for a long time, and it's effectively a tapered bulk. And it works like this. The first sort of couple of shots, I've got a few trimming shot here above my 2 number 9s. And then every single inch that you go down, or every single shot, sorry, that I go down, it increases an inch. So we start at a 1 inch gap, then a 2 inch gap, 3 inch gap, 4 inch gap, 5 inch gap, 6 inch gap, down to the final shot. So these last 4 shot are number 10s, and the next 4 shot are number 9s. I know that that float takes that, so it's dead easy for me at home. You start at the bottom, so start at the bottom, you go 6 inch, 5 inch, 4 inch, 3 inch, 2 inch, 1 inch. So easy to do. It allows the rig to go down fast and then progressively fall, and the fish almost go, what's that? And they follow it down. And when they pick the bait up, it's almost like as they pick the bait up, there's a lot less resistance there. The bulk is spread out through the rig and it isn't too quick. It's a lovely, lovely rig for fishing on commercial, okay? So before I ship out and catch one on that, I'm going to tell you the other rig because it's in complete contrast. But again, it's a rig that has been so successful for me. So this is, again, single 6 slip. And then I've got a 0.75 Kerry float there. In the winter, I think it's essential that you use this type of float because it's got a fibre tip in it. And this stem is that nickel titanium. I mean, for winter, any sort of silver fishing like that, you know, hollow tips are great, but they are definitely not as sensitive. So if you can see the float fine, these fibre tip Kerrys are absolutely brilliant. Nice sort of tapered shape here as well. Then at the bottom, it's a double bulk rig. And there's a few things I do on my rig just to give it the edge. So I've got the bulk there and a little shot around about 1 inch away that kicks my bulk out. Then going down my rig, I've got another dropper here. Again, I'm just trying to prevent any tangles, all right? If you just had a double bulk with the little 3 number 10s here and a bulker shot at the top, you'd find in between you get spin ups and tangles. By having this little shot 1 inch below and then having an almost a traditional dropper in between, it keeps it all clean, it keeps it all falling nicely. It still acts as a double bulk rig, but it stops tangles. It's a fantastic rig. Okay, and these 3 number 10s, I've got 3 or 4 inches of line minimum on the bottom, and that line on the bottom, it just keeps everything dead still and it allows me to wait for a really positive bite, either a big lift up on the float or a proper positive go under. And it means I know then whether the fish are going for it or not. And what I tend to do is think about how they're feeding. So if I end up thinking, do you know what, topping up with little balls of ground bait's really good today, and you get 2 or 3 fish come in and then you don't get a bite and you have to top up again, that's when this double bulk can be brilliant, because effectively you top up with ground bait, 2 or 3 fish come in, get your rig down to the bottom, get those positive bites and catch them. When you're loose feeding and you feel like the fish are just like big roach and an odd skimmer, that's when that other spread out rig can be so much better. So by having the 2 rig options, they're so different from each other, but they give you so much more flexibility. So let's see if I can catch you a fish on both rigs. Let's start with the double bulk rig first of all. Just going to nip a little one of my trimmers off here because I tested this off camera and it was just shotted down a little bit too much, so it should be about right now. Got a single live maggot. Not been paying attention with my loose feed as much, so it'll be interesting to see if we get any bites. Just a hooked maggot there. I've got an 18 SFL on today, 10 hook length. Don't want anything too heavy. I'm not fishing for carp, I'm fishing for skimmers and silverfish. And then I'm just going to put that right on top of those balls of ground bait. And I've just been flicking casters in for, like I say, probably an hour or so now. This is the first time really that I haven't been doing it as religiously as I was, so let's see if we've got any fish there. And I'm just gonna talk you through it as it's happening. So effectively the float should settle right down. Just want to check that that's right. So the best way to put the rig in my opinion, is to flick the rig out so you can see everything go in, and then just hold it tight so you know that it's not going to be tangling. And then you can just let it settle down like so. That's absolutely great. So nicely shotted down, nicely dotted down. So I'm looking for a positive go under, or I'm looking for a big lift where all the bristle comes flying out of the water, a bit like that really. So obviously a few fish moving around there to start with. So let's see. And it's interesting because often you can catch a few quick fish like this, maybe on a rig like this, or get through the little fish. Look at that, you can see it's like lifting up and down a little bit. So there's obviously quite a few fish up in the water, moving up and down. So this rig's probably quite effective at the moment because it's almost bypassing all the chaos and allows me just to sit and wait a little bit longer. And I'm looking for something really positive on the float. I've got 3 number 10s, don't forget. So if a fish moves those 3 number 10s, it's either going to go under like quite quickly, or it's going to lift right up and I'm going to almost see the body of the float. They're the sort of 2 styles of bite that I'm looking for. Hopefully we'll get one on it now. Just going to keep that loose feed going in. Very important to keep your feed going in, especially in these early stages of the session. You're just trying to draw fish into your peg, attract a few fish in. You're gonna, you know, this sort of rig is about patience as well. It's not a busy rig. You don't need to be lifting and dropping it out all the time. Put your rig in, you can sit relatively patiently. You're waiting for that, like I say, a positive indication. You can almost bypass all the other things that are going on. It often is a rig that really comes into its own later in the day. So when the fish start feeding really confidently, you can catch that little bit quicker on this style of rig. So usually to start the session, I'll start on that lighter rig, but obviously had this in our hand. So just start off, see if there's any fish feeding aggressively or anything like that. Was hoping for a nice quick bite. I can see little dinks and indications. There's definitely a fish there. Just waiting, like I say, I'm just waiting for that positive indication, and hopefully it's going to be from the right sort of stamp of fish. But if not, it might be that I need to pick that lighter rig up to actually catch one of these fish early on. It might be that this heavier rig, this bulk down rig, they're just not ready for that form of presentation, which is how it was when I fished the competition here a few weeks ago. I fished with this positive rig and it was just not even in the same league as the lighter sort of strung out rig, if you like. So I can still see the float sort of dipping and dapping. There's obviously a few fish there. I mean, it would probably prove the point, to be fair, if we don't catch one on this, and then we can go out on the lighter rig and hopefully see if we can get one. So just again, one more loose feed. Let's see if we can get a positive fish there. Yeah, waiting. I'm definitely waiting. I feel like there is fish there though, because I'm seeing those indications on the float. I feel like there's fish there, but I've got to be honest and say it doesn't feel like this rig is quite right. It seems to me like at the moment, look, there's a little dip there, but it's not a positive dip. It's just a little tiny show on the flow. It's nothing. It's not. I'm looking for really positive indications, and the fish probably just aren't quite feeding in that style just yet. So we'll give it another couple of seconds, and if we don't get one, we'll just bring it in and we'll pick that lighter rig up, see if that makes a difference. I'm convinced it will. Yeah, come on, let's put that on. That's why it's so important. And I bet you if we came back to this rig later in the session, it'd be like, oh wow, this is the best rig by a mile. So it's so important to have these 2 rigs. This rig's only like an inch or so on the bottom, and it's a little bit, it's shotted right down, so I can only see the very top of the float. Everything's a little bit more critical. It's got that nice strong bulk. I felt there was fish there. I didn't feel like it was a fishless swim. It seemed to me like there was fish there. So I've just flicked the rig out slightly, just avoiding the leaves a little bit. So flick that rig out slightly. Loose feed my casters. Let's see if we can get a bite on this rig. So there you go, you see it shotted down there. Like I said, I felt there was fish in the peg. I felt like there was little dinks. Is this rig gonna show itself? Look there, like little dinks on the float straight away. There we go, look at that. What a difference that is. That's unbelievable, bearing in mind that I just sat there for all that time and felt there was fish there, but and look, it's these fish, it's these sort of like 10 ounce, 8 to 10 ounce skimmers. That's an absolutely classic example of having the right rig is going to catch you more fish. Let's try and catch you one more fish, because I want to prove that this rig, look, those sorts of fish, when those bigger fish come into the peg, maybe those slightly bigger bream, or you get an influx of like lots of skimmers in the peg, it can make a, you know, that other rig might be better. But for me, that was like night and day, that rig compared to that double bolt rig. So let's just have one more go, try and prove it wasn't a fluke, because I'm sure it wasn't. I'm sure that, like I said, when I fished the other day, the difference in the rigs was astonishing, really. But I've had so many good days on that other rig, I would never not set it up. You know, I'd always make sure I had both rigs ready. So it's just settling down now, look, right down to a dot. Look at that, you can already see it starting, like these little dinks and movements. It's obviously fishing the peg. It is that early part of the session where those fish might just be just a little bit more cautious. They're flying around the peg, they're not, you know, they're not quite settled. And I'm sure this rig is going to catch us another fish. I can almost like see it happening. It's like little, look at it, look, little dink on the float. It's amazing to watch. Look at that, a little tiny movement, but a positive one, and it's a fish again. So what a difference that has made. It's unbelievable how you can change rig and get a better response. And on another day, believe me, this rig will not be right. It will be the other rig, it will be the more positive rig. But early on in this session, and I can tell it, the fish are flighty, they're in and amongst the peg, they're busy. Look at that, beautiful fish, probably 10 ounce that fish. Now 2 fish for £1, just by having the right rig over your feed, you will be able to catch more fish this winter.